Good evening. Welcome to this episode of Prophecy for the Last Hour. My name is Elizabeth McGee. I'm your host tonight. This is actually episode 79 that I'm doing. I have a YouTube channel. If you're interested, you can look up my name, Liz McGee, and it'll bring up over 120 videos. So, all on the topic, basically, biblical prophecy, the last days, the mysteries, and a lot of different things, and a lot of the books that are coming back to us. So there's a whole, this is an exciting time, very exciting time to be alive. The Lord is coming soon and very soon, and I just want to be all about my Father's business. So on that note, I want to jump into tonight's teaching. The last episode I did, so what did I say, 78, God, which I titled, God Has an Agenda, and it's called Prophecy. I did say that I was next going to delve into what is known today called the reptilian brain, because you really do need to understand, in order to understand what's going on today, which is just all levels of craziness, you do have to understand the reptilian brain and what this means and how we're being wired to think and react and actually engage out of the reptilian brain. So I will get to that. But I'm going to start here with a quote out of Jude, a New Testament book, one of the smallest books in the Bible, but one of the most packed, literally packed with great deep understanding. Jude was a brother of James the Just, who was the earliest, he was a brother of Yeshua, Jesus. They were stepbrothers, but he was very close to the core, and he had tremendous understanding and coming out of, and I believe, and I have YouTubes on this, that this family and John the Baptist, Mary, this whole clan of believers that's on the scene at this time are coming out of the Essene tradition, which now we can have great understanding of because of the Dead Sea Scrolls. But there's a quote in Jude, it's actually Jude verse 4, it says, he says, "For certain men whose condemnation was written about long ago have secretly slipped in among you. They are godless men who change the grace of our God into a license for immorality and deny Jesus Christ, our only sovereign Lord and Savior." Now, what I want to focus on about that certain men whose condemnation was written about long ago. Now listen, I've said this like a lot. A rose is still a rose. It doesn't matter what you call it. What I'm coming to understand is that a lot of the words that are used biblically or that we might use in more modernistic ways are different words, but they are saying the same thing, the concept, the essence. This is the whole concept with the Tower of Babel. Languages divide, but in every language you will find the same core truth. So water, whether it's aqua or water or whatever it is, it's still water. So in other words, a rose is still a rose. What we have to get back to in reading all these texts, reading deeply across the board, is what is the essence that the word, the symbol, is trying to get through. Once we can establish the essence, the concept, then we have a common language that we can talk, and we can bring unity, which is what we're all about, the restoration of all things. So these certain men, these men who were written about long ago, whose condemnation was written about. This is a reference to Enoch. This is a direct quote out of 1st Enoch, and this is what Enoch says at the end of the age. You have to understand who these men are. Okay, they've been with us from the beginning. Cain was really the first in this long line of men whose condemnation has been spoken of and been given. These are the cursed. In every generation, there's a cursed generation. There's a cursed seed. There are the wicked. There are the tares, the dark overlords. I mean, I don't really care. Again, what's the essence? I don't really care what you call them. There are problem people on the planet, and they are not serving let's say my father, our father, the Judeo-Christian Yahweh Elohim, they are worshiping and following another God, the Dark Lord, okay? That's one modern way to say it. So this is something that we need to understand. We're in the same battle. We are literally in a battle. We've always been in this battle. It's spiritual warfare, and it goes on a multi-dimensional levels. Physically, carnally, in our souls, astrally, psychically. These are some of the words. Again, let's find the essence of what we're saying, different words. So in the soul level, astro, psychic, or even in the spiritual level, celestial, heavenly. If you're Gnostic, you would call them the aeons and the archons. You could call them the archangels and the fallen angels. Okay, so we got to be tracking with these concepts. Okay, so we have, but this is here. Jude is telling the church, this early budding sect of believers now coming out of mostly the Essene tradition, who have seen that the Messiah ben Joseph, the long-awaited promised Messiah, has come, died, buried, and resurrected, and much of the prophetic word towards him had passed, and they were now getting new marching orders, and something huge was being birthed in the whole world. I mean, literally, spiritually, this was like an atom bomb going off. Its repercussions are still affecting us today, 2,000 years later. But they infiltrated. This is the point he's saying. These people, this is called, the seed of Cain. I'm not going to go into this in any depth. Okay, this is, the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. This is the hybrid race. These are the goats. There's so many ways the prophets, and even in our culture, you call them draconians. I mean, they got some crazy names for it today. Okay, but this is what we're talking about. All right, slipping in secretly among you. So let's just establish that's a fact. But he's just telling something, and Jude it's not even rocket science. I mean, he's trying to warn them, this is going to happen. These people are very slick, they're very subtle. This first one, the Nakash, the serpent in the garden, beguiled Eve. I'm not even going to unpack with that, I'm not going to give, you can take it at its kindergarten level, ate an apple, but I will. And I have begun to pack, and many people are unpacking the adult theme here of what we're talking about, okay? And it's still going on today, okay? So again, all this being said, because this has to do with, again, the reptilian brain, which I'm going to get into, and where it comes from, and why, and sort of what's going on. But that being said, these infiltrators, this has happened many times in history. History repeats itself. And if you don't learn from your mistakes, and if you're not vigilant, it's always good versus evil. So there's the phrase that says, evil triumphs when good men do nothing. They just they're like asleep at the switch. This is what happened in the oceans, but it's happened many times. And this is what, in my opinion, we have just let happen to our country, our government, and the election of Trump was like a major praise the God, mercy move of God to help us do some damage control. Because these people were really getting the upper hand and subjecting the America, who has a role in prophecy. So God needed to do something really radical, and he did it. Praise God. But that was my last teaching. I talked a lot about that. But we need to understand a little bit more how big the battle is and some more of the stuff that we're dealing with. But these infiltrators, this happens in every group. This is not even what I want to say, just germane to the Jews. The Jews at the time of Christ, they were infiltrated by, in many ways, they were very infiltrated by these same kind of people, the Edomites. You could call them the Idumeans. There's many ways that Jesus talked about, to a certain kind of group of rabbi teachers. You are of your father, the devil. The zealots, the Sicarii of the time, who were the assassins. They literally were political assassins. That's why there was so much unrest. You fast forward into the destruction of the temple at 70 AD, Masada. A lot of these things are happening because of the infiltrators, okay? Now, the Christians, this has happened in the church. This has been happening. This is, should not be any, to an astute student of history, when things get really rotten, something's really rotten in Denmark, you look at it, the bad fruit that starts coming out of institutions or peoples or family lines, bloodlines, monarchies, all these things out of nations. This is because the Canaanites usually, and their associated bedfellows, for lack of a better word, because I can't really unpack it tonight, get the upper hand. This is the whole point of what Jesus was saying. He said in the garden where it all started, where he said, he will bruise your heel and you will bruise his head. This is sort of a Hebrew idiom for sometimes they'll be up, sometimes you're going to be up. And it's a constant battle. But the Jews had this problem. The Christians in the Crusades. See, what I'm trying to say is, we shouldn't, and nobody should be acting pious or righteous or holier than thou, like, oh yeah, we got it ironclad. None of these infiltrators are ever going to get into our camp. Well, you know what? You're just not working with a full deck there. The Christians, the Crusades. This is a perfect example of when really and truly the church was infiltrated. The Crusaders and the bloodshed, this is one of the dark sides of Christianity. People will always say, oh yeah, well they were mass murdering just like everybody else. Well, yeah, to a certain extent there was a period in Christianity that was pretty dark because they really were infiltrated pretty heavily by this group, Luciferians, another name, and they were, going after the Holy Land, but they were really just bounty hunters, treasure hunters. They're just looking for all the treasure. There's a whole fascinating story, really interesting, of the temple. There's this whole, and I can't even go into it, but oh my gosh, there's so many interesting sidebar storylines going on. Okay, so even the Muslims, and this is the problem today. This is so current. The Islam is a perfect example of a religion that has been hijacked or has been radicalized. Now, I am sure most Muslims are not bloodthirsty suicide bombers. But at the same time, they're not exactly the most vocal group kind of policing their own camp, so to speak. They have been infiltrated and they are being radicalized, and this is biblical, this is prophetic, and this is going to cause a lot of problems. It has caused a lot of problems. It's going to continue to cause a lot of problems till we get down to the wire. Okay, so this is something you have to be vigilant. You have to understand what's going on, because my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, okay? But if you got your eyes wide open, it's a different story. Now, let me get back right into the reptilian brain here, because this is something that's needed to be understood. Let me see if I can quickly. They know so much about the brain today. This is one of the things. Science is exploding with knowledge. It is an area that's increasing. The verse in Daniel that says knowledge shall increase, people do like to keep that strictly in like the physical sciences and things, but no, it ultimately means spiritual understanding will increase. We will have so much light and the spotlight on this problem, the wicked and the tares. They will have no place left to hide. That's part of it. So because knowledge is going to increase, we're going to put the whole thing, Humpty Dumpty, back together again, and with our eyes wide open, we are going to understand what's going on, and we're not going to stand for it anymore. And Yahushua is going to come back and put a total end to it. But, and I know I talk fast, I'm sorry, but this is why on YouTube it's great, because you can pause it, stop it, go back, listen again, or whatever. Okay. Rashi, who is one of the greatest Torah sage scholars of the Middle Ages, okay, very well respected, he has this little comment I want to make now, because, okay, so in our brain, there's three kind of basic levels of our persona. Now, I have said, maybe we're a body, a soul, and a spirit. We're a triune being. Well, our brain, isn't that interesting, happens to parallel that concept. You have what's first called the neocortex. Okay, we know, and it's the bigger part of the brain. The neocortex is where the rational thinking, critical thinking, this is the most important component of the human being. He is the only species on the planet that actually has this wiring, this kind of computer programming, brain operating, where they can do massive, critical, rational thinking. And even there, the experts tell you we only use like 10% of our brain. So imagine the capability that's in this neocortex brain, okay? This is where language comes from, ideas, concepts, artistic, and creative imagination, understanding our concepts for justice, and the higher laws of ethics. These things are all coming out of our neocortex, rational or thinking brain, okay? This is the part of us, in my opinion, and this is really a Kabbalistic concept, this is a Jewish understanding, this is the higher soul, the spirit. See, Adam was made in the image of God. Well, God, who is actually mind, he is spirit, he is the highest, this is the mind of Christ, the highest ordered. And when you understand the Kabbalah and the Sephirot, and you have Keter and being an understanding, Yah said, get wisdom and get understanding. That's the critical thinking. That is the highest level of anything, computer, most sophisticated programs that are running, okay? And God happens to be the brain and the operation, and that's where he is, okay? This is the mind of God. This is the image of God. This is part when they talks about the Godhead that I was saying, with the higher Sephirot, okay? Now, then you come down to what is called the limbic brain, okay, which is sort of the mammal brain. It's sort of more of a, okay, this is where our emotions, our feelings, our memories, our habits, where we make decisions that are based on emotions. This is where we will make decisions based on not critical thinking, okay, but on fear or pleasure, whether it be addiction, on the good side and the bad side. See, this is for when Jesus was talking about out of the heart are the issues of life. This is the soul life. These are the programs that are very sophisticated. Again, in the human, these are very sophisticated. But it's like lower on the level. Okay, we get great pleasure, listening to great music. The composing of it, the actual math and composing of huge symphonies, which is like huge brain capacity, is done in the neocortex. But the emotional response, the love of it, the beauty of it, the soothing of the soul, that all part of it is being processed by the limbic brain. Okay, now the last part of this thing. Now this is Adam Caveman in a nutshell, because this is the Adam that is made in the image of God, okay? But what happened was, see, and this is where you got to know the details. The devil is in the details, and he constantly tries to rewrite the history. But okay, the reptilian brain. Okay, this is what got like turned on or activated. Okay, to us in the Adamic race. Okay, this is a beast brain. This is sort of like what an animal instinctually functions on. Okay, this is the survival mode. This is the fight or flight. This is decisions are based on instinct. I'm hungry. You kill and eat. Boom. And if you're in front of me and your lunch, there's no rational thinking like, oh my gosh, do you have a family and kids? But no, you're a rabbit, I eat you, that's done. Okay, this is very instinctual, very guttural, I guess, if that's a word. And this is in the idea that is the beast category, okay? Now, what had happened, and this is sort of the concept in a big picture of Adam and Eve in the garden, and the Nakash, the serpent, was one of the most, it says he was the most, he was a beast of the field. That's what it says. And this is what it's referring to. He was a high ordered. It says he was the most subtle and I think beautiful. I mean, he was like the highest ordered species or creation in this category, okay? And this level of functioning is not, we shouldn't be so dismissive. There's a lot of cunning, There's a lot of subtlety. I mean, I guess the thing is, we just think it's so busy. But if you ever watch a lion, you know, this is the whole point. Watch these animals do their instinctions, like stalk, you know, when they're prey. It's very smart. They know what they're doing. They're using all sorts of sensory perception and sight and subtlety. We just don't. We have to not think of this. That they're not thinking. There's not a high level of sophistication going on, but it's not rational. It's not critical. Okay, they can't decide and say, you know, if they're like programmed to eat the antelope, they're not going to all of a sudden, well, you know what, I'm sick of antelope today. I think I'm going to learn how to fish. You know what, I know there's fish out there. I think I'm going to learn how to fish and make a sphere and stuff and try to spear fish. That's just not going to happen, okay? So we have to understand the different levels, what is, you know, the max that these different brain styles or programs can do, and what in their narrowest sense, all right? So the beast of the field, it isn't that he was stupid, okay, because he was very subtle. He seduced Eve, okay? This is the point. He was able to beguile her, all right? This is the beginning of original sin. This is called, and actually, this is from Rashi. I want to read this because, so you know, this is totally Jewish tradition and understanding. Because okay? He, meaning Adam, was not imbued with the evil inclination, which is another way of saying that's what they call the reptilian brain. In other words, it has a lot of names, until he ate of the tree. Remember, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The evil inclination entered into him, and he knew the difference between good and evil. Now, it's interesting, too, because Rashi, when he uses the word imbue, which is probably a translation, but that word imbued, I had to look it up because I wanted to be really precise. You should always look up your words. It really means a stain, to drench something, to stain it. You know, when we talk about the stain of original sin. So this action of Adam and Eve, remember, first, and then Adam followed suit. This stain, this evil inclination became part of their genetics. There was an act, and I won't even go into it. I think I have totally unpacked in a few of my videos. There's a couple of people online. The sea serpent, the first hybridization, it's very hybrid. They produce the first hybrid. It's very sexual. I mean, this is the whole point. It had came out of another race of being. It says it right there, the serpent, the Nakash. I mean, this is what we're talking about, okay? This is the beginning of this evil inclination, this reptilian brain being turned on, being activated. Even, I don't know if we had it or not. I don't know if this is the first introduction of this in the human brain. But I do think there's a certain amount of necessity for the fear and flight of this, even in the human. But it got amped up and turned on and activated. Okay, in a level it was never, ever, ever intended to be. And this is called the evil inclination. This is called iniquity. Oh, I wish I had a little piece of paper. There's about 7 different phrases or words that the different prophets use for it. I didn't have time to dig out this little quote I have, okay? So we need to understand this and why we fell. This is the whole point. We're not like falling off a ladder. This is sort of and I want to use the word clear thing. It's not evolutionary in the sense that the evolutionists who promote, you know, we came from apes type of thing, want to tell you. There is a concept of evolution in the but it's not random, or it is 100% linear, ordered, comes out of the mind of God, who knew exactly what he was doing, as this thing is coming out of, in the beginning, you know, he created the heavens and the earth, and I don't want to get into coming out of to the greater, I don't know how to explain this, simplicity breeding complexity, very primordial elements coming into formation, into different ways, into greater and greater complexity, but it's ordered. It's planned. It's a perfect ecosystem. It works. It'll go on humming forever. There's nothing random or evolutionary out of luck out of this thing. So just cast that out in your mind. And also, with Adam and Eve, if, you know, and they'll try to tell you, like, if you will, that this is an evolutionary, this brain, it's an evolution. No, it's this is the whole point of the consequence of sin. It's not evolutionary. We got this thing turned on as a consequence of sin. I mean, it was a fully premeditated behavior that happened that had very stiff consequences for the whole human race. Okay, so there's nothing evolutionary about it. This is how Satan tries to water down what has been going on. Okay, now this whole concept that I've been talking about in the different brains, because see, we need to get, there's so much going on, people. The warfare that is being foisted on us today, most people are absolutely clueless to, and most people are defenseless to, because we are getting, I mean, you look at the diseases and the breakdown in our society, in our the generation of children coming up, the whole lawlessness and chaos that's just run. Okay, this is a very kind of planned assault. This is part of the spiritual warfare that's going on us in multidimensional levels, and it is genetic and physical, genetic manipulation and warfare on us on many levels, and it is also a soul matrix, like a warfare going on our soul. Okay, and the ancients had totally dealt with this. You know, the book of Enoch, this has happened before. You know, the watcher angels, you have the flood, you have the Tower of Babel, you have David and his mighty men. I mean, many times. This is, you've always had to fight evil. Okay, and like I said, we have to begin to understand what we're talking about. This level of spiritual warfare is being foisted on us in so many ways. And I can't really touch on it, but let me give you two things. One is the mass media. This is where I really want to go to, and how the reptilian brain is being so turned on, the way we culturally live our lives today. And then also in the multidimensional levels. Now, whether there's something out there, you can Google it, you can educate yourself. You know, people make fun of the internet, but I'm telling you what, it is the greatest tool we have, because there is information, and when you have the mind of Christ, and when you understand that if you ask God for truth from a pure heart and you do the work, the necessary research, you know, you apply your mind to wisdom and to knowledge is what it says, you can understand this stuff. But whether weaponry and terraforming, now those are kind of code words. You know, people think you're either going to believe two things. You're going to get two spins on this thing, and they're totally opposite. So one is true and one is false. So you do the research and you make up your mind, okay? It's either climate change and global warming, or it is weather weaponry and terraforming by principalities in league with humans on levels that has happened in the past, but that we are clueless to today, okay? You should, weather weaponry and terraforming, okay? This is huge. That's why you get somebody like Trump, or you get people out there saying, no, it's not global. We are in a war, people, and these people are so sophisticated, okay? Now, so that being said, so here you have something that's multidimensional going on, the weather weaponry, or you have genetic on our soul. I mean, the food, between the foods we eat, the music we listen to, the energy frequency wavelengths that are being bombarded on us all the time. And now let me go into this in the media as a main one, okay? Because, I mean, this whole election we just had was amazing, but it really, because many people were praying, and that really and truly, that the wicked, this is, you know, I'm a drain the swamp, because we have been infiltrated, people. The government